Hold on, just because.
Join me, please, in welcoming that fabulous group of young men.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Bushwick Politic.
Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm Jason Jones.
I'm Adi Eshman. What a week. What a couple of weeks.
It has been absolutely crazy, my man.
But we started Bushwick Politic after the election, 2016. It was a different world. And think about how much has changed in 4 years.
It's been 4 wild years. I mean, when we started this show originally, we did it just to kind of understand, how all of this could even come about, how the Trump presidency even happened. Is America that racist? Is America that stupid?
Yes.
And honestly, I feel like this last election has answered the question kind of,
Well,
it was too close. It was far too close for something that was, to us so obvious.
I think John Oliver had a great point on Sunday Night Show where he said, how do you go from Barack Obama to a white supremacist to Kamala Harris? And, Joe Biden often has this in his speech that Donald Trump isn't who we are. But the fact that we went from Obama to Trump to Kamala Harris kind of shows who we are. Like, this is who America is. We're a country that elects all of these three leaders to lead our country.
It's insane, but it does kind of show, as a country, we have many faces. We're bipolar as hell. I mean, we were so close to a fascist dictator. We barely dodged that by the hair of our chins. And I can't believe how close the race actually was, especially after 4 years of this guy.
Tell me a little bit about like what your election experience was, Tuesday night all the way until the announcement on Saturday.
So election night, we just kind of hung out and watched the results come in. I did early voting by mail, so it wasn't really a big deal. I had voted over a week before the actual day. But, just seeing all the tallies run in, obviously, Trump started with the lead because of the in-person thing. Obviously, people who would lean left also care about their health and safety a little more, I'm guessing. So, hence the mail-in thing.
Right.
And, eventually, obviously, everything came to fruition. I mean, currently right now, Joe Biden's up by 5 million in the popular vote, and it keeps growing. The fact that we have a system at all in which one party leader could be up 5 million votes, and the fact that the other party even has the audacity to demand a recount, it's like in what other civilized democracy is that even allowed?
Right.
You lost by 5 million votes. I mean, that wasn't close. There's no voter fraud in the world big enough to cover that up, that kind of gap. And the fact that it even got so close within the Electoral College just kind of proves the antiquatedness of the system in general. Hopefully, this is the year, or this is the presidency in which we can get rid of that. It doesn't make sense.
Right. I mean, I think we're going to jump ahead a little bit, but I think that's ultimately on my menu of what I hope a Biden administration will start with is, of course, we have to look towards January 5th and the Georgia runoff. And, there's a lot of different ways to get involved, whether it's donating to Stacey Abrams' organization, Fair Fight and Fair Count, phone banking for John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock. There's a lot of different ways to get involved in the lead up to January 5th. But, assuming that whatever happens in the Senate, I hope that we're able to consolidate our power in U.S. government. We can't have Republicans controlling shit anymore. We just can't do it.
It's just clearly bad for all of America.
It means getting rid of the Electoral College, making D.C. a state, so we get more Congress people and more senators who lean left. looking at packing the courts. So any legislation that a Democratic Senate and Congress passes won't immediately be thrown out by a 6-3, in some cases, illegitimately appointed Supreme Court. Like, we just have to consolidate. Like, we cannot have this be so close anymore. The Republicans are in such a minority of this country, and yet they have the majority of the Supreme Court justices. Just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
And Democrats are so afraid also. That's the thing that also bothers me. We're so afraid to consolidate our power and to show that we're actually in the majority in this country, and take these like very aggressive steps towards saying like we have to be a majority in government. We can't just make this a 50-50 thing, which, even if Democrats take control of the Senate, it'll still be 50 senators with Kamala being the tiebreaker.
Right. That's the best case scenario. And honestly, it's interesting because on the one hand, you have a party that never plays by the rules, that, kind of uses underhanded tricks of the trade, examples like gerrymandering and voter suppression, to really, push a narrative of a minority that is obviously slowly but surely losing power and losing face within American democracy in general. And it's our job right now to really put our foot down on the throat. I know Joe Biden, preaches himself as a president that'll be on both sides. He'll be, president for all Americans, I guess was the quote. And that's awesome. But at the same time, we do have to progress as a society. We've been held back by poor leadership, and it is his job to do the hard thing and say, the 25% or so of American electorate that did vote for Trump, it's his job to say, no, you're wrong. Wearing a mask is now a federal mandate. And, we got to get the numbers down in this country. It just doesn't even make sense. 5% of the world's population, yet 25% of the world's cases. It's disgusting. And the death rate is out of control. We're up to 240,000.
Oh, I think I'm losing you, Jason.
Brazil, they're down to 160. So
I lost you a little bit. I lost you when you said something about Brazil.
Oh yeah, no, I was saying the next country even closer to us is Brazil. They have 160,000 reported deaths. So us at 2 of the world right now, especially considering that we are the richest nation and have the most resources to fight this disease. It's just been ignored by the current administration. It was funny because we were watching Democracy Now! Earlier today, and it showed the reaction of different leaders from around the world and how they reacted to the Biden victory. It was really interesting because in Brazil, obviously Bolsonaro, huge Trump guy, he's actually refused to recognize Biden as president as well. So that'll be interesting to see how that really affects, U.S.-Brazilian relations going forward. I imagine he'll have to face the truth eventually, or, if he is such a truth denier as Trump himself was, if he falls along the line of that, kind of like our guest, the mayor, talked about, creating that fabricated reality, in a sense, to jar his base, because they do use similar dictatorial, fascist techniques to talk to their uneducated base and whatnot. If that continues down there, hopefully that leads to their revolution and their freedom from Bolsonaro. It's interesting because, obviously within the last 4 years, we've seen a huge, kind of red wave, a rightward shift within politics globally. You look at United States, you look at Brazil, you look at Poland, you look at Erdogan in Turkey. There's so many kind of semi-quasi dictatorial figures that are emerging from the world. And with the fall of Trump, hopefully this marks the beginning of a new era of a return to, at the very least, a return to neoliberalism, something where that could maintain some sort of peace.
Well, to put on my democratic socialist hat,
I mean,
They would
obvious.
say, democratic socialists would say, neoliberalism is what got us into this mess in the first place.
Oh no, it definitely is. But at the
Yeah.
same time, let's take a step back so we can go in a different direction, as
Yeah.
opposed to, you know what I'm saying? It's like sometimes you got to go back to go forward in the right direction. And I think this is one of those cases, and especially America being the not the most educated country in the world. I think it's going to take steps to get the general populace pointed into the direction of progress. So you can
Right.
lead a horse to water,
Well, I
but
think
we
I think the
really have to convince
country,
them.
I think what the election showed is we do live in a very conservative country, but I do also believe that leadership can change culture and policy can change culture. So when you have a person changing policy, like Biden, or let's say whoever he puts in that cabinet, um, I think that will be changing like US culture. That will be changing how kids look at how society should function in the United States. I'm really excited about the potential of, the federal government getting bigger. Like we've had to be used to a really small federal government for the past 4 years, a government that can't respond to pandemics or give people jobs or housing or healthcare. And I hope that in a Biden administration that we'll be looking at a much, a much more substantial federal government, a much larger one, or at least a more efficient one. Certainly, a lot of roles weren't filled out during the Trump administration. I don't think we had like ambassador to a number of different countries while Trump was president. Another thing that I didn't want to bury the lead, but one thing that's exciting is, speaking of policy, is one of our former guests, Adriana Flores, is now going to be a member of Biden's immigration team. She's going to be directing immigration policy in the Biden administration. So Bushwick Politic, talking to the future leaders of this country. So if you want to check that out, it's on YouTube. She was a member of the Obama administration with Molly Dillon, who was also our guest that night. And Adriana is going to now go on to be working in immigration policy, trying to pass some real reforms in our country.
That's awesome. And she seemed, just like from my memorization of that particular interview, she seemed like she had a good scope of, the problems within this administration's, immigration policy, or the lack thereof.
Yeah.
And, she really seemed to have her head on the ball. So hopefully that goes well. And
she went to Harvard, like
progressive
low-key.
policy.
Low-key went to Harvard. No big deal.
Okay. Yeah, right. No big deal.
No big deal. So Adriana is going to go on to the Biden administration, and I just thought that would be a cool announcement to make, that we've had some pretty important guests on our show.
Wow, that is awesome. And
yeah,
I mean, going forward, there's certain things we need to focus on, obviously. What do you think are going to be some of Biden's biggest problems going into office?
Yeah,
in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, the biggest ones, which is climate change. Coronavirus, I think, is going to be priority number one. How do we make it so that we don't have 1,000 deaths every day, inching closer to 2,000 deaths every day? It could be, I mean, we're really going in the wrong direction with this. And it's those Trump counties in Nebraska and Iowa and North Dakota that are being hit the hardest right now. I heard a statistic on Democracy Now! That if North Dakota was its own country, it would have the highest death rate of any country in the world of COVID. 9 out of 10
I saw that statistic.
9 out of 10 ICU beds are now occupied in Wisconsin. Just some terrifying things. So I think for a Biden administration, getting COVID under control, we're going to go back into the Paris Climate Accord, so dealing with climate change, depending on our control of the Senate, maybe passing like a huge expansion of the Green New Deal, phasing out oil and gas exploration, fracking, things like that. I think he's going to run into some issues when it comes to economic legislation. I think that there's broad support around raising the minimum wage. There's broad support, I think, now about universal basic income. But I think it's going to be very hard to pass these things if there's not a Senate majority. And I think that also it's also, the things that he's saying about racial equity and racial justice. I think these are things that have broad support, these ideas, but I think on the policy level, it's going to be very hard to pass these things without a Senate majority. But there's still a lot he can do from the executive office. For me, just personally, I think, expanding our power in government, packing the courts, getting rid of the Electoral College, adding DC as a state. I mean, for me, that's a priority. And then the other one for me would be ending mass incarceration. Taking a look at that. And in the Obama era, we were already looking at phasing out, at decreasing the number of contracts we were giving to opening private prisons. But then Trump reversed that. So, and now, there's this huge issue with private run detention centers that are racking up all these infractions, including COVID spreading rampantly and sexual assault at detention centers, privately run detention centers that are holding Central American immigrants. So yeah, I mean, what are those priorities?
No, it's just like you listed. I mean, obviously, number one, COVID. That's honestly, I think historically that's going to mark Trump's legacy, is his inability to handle something that the last administration prepared him for. Yeah. He really will go down in history as the worst American president of all time, which I cannot be happier about. That's awesome. When our kids learn about American history, they're going to see, at one point in time, America made a horrible, horrible decision. Yeah. And we learned, luckily we were able to learn from it quickly. Yeah. And, going forward, it's really our responsibility to take on, some of those major challenges. Obviously, one that I've noticed, one that's the biggest, most glaring for me, is the issue of climate change. Something's got to be done. You can see, you notice it in the weather. There's no hard winters in New York anymore. It's a subtropical climate. How did that happen? The ice is melting in Greenland. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, there are some things where it's just like, you can attribute some things to, patternal shifts or whatever in the Earth's atmosphere. You could science it up and wish it away. But at this point in time, it's gotten so blatantly obvious with the number of hurricanes, and now there's fire tornadoes and all kinds of crazy stuff happening that, it's really obvious that we're killing our planet. Yeah. And the fact that the Trump regulation actually got rid of, took us out of the Paris Accord, got rid of NEPA, and appointing people to the head of environmental protection agencies that were like former oil barons and shit. Just a straight disrespect to Mother Earth. You know what I'm saying? Just
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Just a pure reversal.
To be fair, Trump doesn't like any women.
He's
not a fan of any women.
He's clearly not a fan of women. I don't know if maybe he has a terrible relationship with his mom. Who knows? I didn't read the book that came out, but with his niece. Did you ever read that?
No, I didn't read it. No.
I'm not interested enough in his life. I just want him gone. I don't care. He doesn't get dictatorial credit. He's not that intelligent. He really bumbled his way through this administration.
I feel so I have a question, because I feel like when you I think we have different questioning styles. I feel like I noticed you ask questions about what's possible, and on like you look on the bright side, and I'm very much stuck on like the past and the negative. So I'm going to ask you a question now, which is do you think it's possible that Trump would have won if we didn't have a pandemic?
If we didn't have a pandemic?
If we did not have a pandemic, do you think Trump would have won?
Would Trump have won? Yeah, I think he definitely would have. America was too on the fence. It got too close, and America's just stupid. Like there's a lot of people who won't do anything within the political process until it affects them directly. Yeah. And COVID hit home for literally everyone. So, they had to get up, and, luckily it swayed in our favor. But honestly, the fact that 70 million people still voted for the guy is just a reflection on the poor education system within this country, and or the lack of ethics. Like we got to get back to some sort of moral code,
Yeah.
you know. And it's funny how hypocritical the people who preach morality are the people trying to destroy our democracy.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's kind of baffling and it's laughable. And because of these clowns, it's now our charge as the progressive wing to really put our staple within this kind of centrist left government and really push them all the way. You know, like you said before in the, you know, when we were talking, the Democrats sometimes have a chance to you know, put their foot on the gas, but it seems like they're so afraid of seeming dictatorial that they really don't take advantage of those opportunities. And so we're left to minority rule. I think the only solution is to go, you know, full AOC on this and institute some form of general socialism.
Well,
but you know, that's a step-by-step process.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
you know, it comes down to human rights.
Yeah. And what do you mean it comes down to human rights?
I mean, the thing is, I feel like there's beginning to be a strong and powerful mindset shift, especially with, you know, it started in the left progressive wing. Now it's delineating, you know, throughout the left, and should eventually spread through all of America. And that's the notion. It's no longer a pull yourself up by the bootstraps type of country. It should be a, if you are working and you are willing, then you should at least have food in your stomach and roof over your head type of country. It's, you know, there are too many people that work too hard to not be able to make it by, to the point where that kind of, you know, pull yourself up by the bootstraps narrative is no longer relevant within American society.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, so many institutional flaws are being shown, you know, within our, you know, not only our political system, our social justice system, as well as our economic system. It's being argued right now that capitalism in itself is racist. And there are good arguments for that. So I think right now there is a strong will to shift from traditional capitalism to something more equitable and more fair, in which there's at least, you know, the promise of opportunity. Whereas, you know, if you're willing to work hard, then you have the chance to get ahead. It's almost like a fulfillment of the original American dream, except it's being adjusted to today's modern times. You know, there are people who made billions over this, you know, pandemic, and there are other people who can't eat. And the wealth gap has gotten so extreme in this country, it's now almost an oligarchic state.
Yeah.
So that's something that just needs to reverse, so that the average American feels that they have stake within the country.
Right.
And, you know, there can be a little more faith put back within the system. I, as an average American, should believe that my vote actually counts. I shouldn't know for fact that some fool with a high school education in Nebraska vote counts more than mine living in New York, simply because there's less population there.
Right.
And, you know, they're more of an echo chamber. You know,
oh my God. One Pennsylvania vote this election was like 1,000 California votes. Did you see the margin that Trump lost California by? I mean, it was like, it was ridiculous. I mean, I think those 5 million votes came from California in terms of the popular vote. He lost by such a huge margin there. Other things then I wanted to bring up is, well, you know, people partying in the streets on Saturday. I forget if I was talking with you about this, but it, you know, called to my mind like celebrations at the end of World War II. You know, people out in the streets celebrating, no kissing. So that was different from the end of World War II. But I kind of wanted to dig deeper into that and like explore, like, well, what are some other similarities to World War II? So I came up with a few. Can I share those with you?
Let's hear them.
So some similarities between now, the end of Trump, and the end of World War II. Okay. So death toll. World War II killed around 400,000. Oh, sorry, I'm admitting your mom. World War II killed somewhere in the vicinity of 400,000 American troops. Scientists believe, researchers believe, right now the official total of COVID deaths is 240,000, but researchers believe that as many as 400,000 Americans have died of COVID. So actually, we might have a very similar death toll of US troops killed in World War II and Americans who've been killed by COVID. In terms of infections and injuries, roughly 600,000 American troops were injured in World War II. We have now about, 10 million infections in the United States. So, that's another huge number. In World War II, the economy shifted. The industry had to shift to create tanks and planes and guns. In our economy, manufacturing had to shift to produce, our protective equipment, masks, and protective gear for hospitals. And then I loved Colin Jost's joke. He goes, I don't know if you can really compare the end of the Third Reich to the end of Trump, but both have ended with an authoritarian figure trapped in a bunker. And he used Trump trapped in a gulf in one of those sand dunes, trying to golf. That was funny. So yeah, those are some of the similarities I kind of wrote down.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a very interesting time because we did really see the end to what was going to be an authoritarian figure. He was making dictatorial moves. He still is. He's refused to concede.
Yeah.
Like as we speak right now of our victory, this fool has refused to concede, and he's still making appointments for next year. And obviously, because he's appointed his own henchmen to crucial roles, Biden's not even getting presidential briefings as of yet.
Right. Do you think that Trump could subvert the election and just continue his hold on power?
Absolutely not. That would be a revolutionary moment. And the thing is, like, just know in so many ways, like, I feel like no one's looking for a civil war. And I feel like if it got down to the point where he just refused to leave, he would be escorted out, hopefully in chains and dragged through the streets like Saddam.
Yeah.
Like, we need to Saddam that motherfucker.
Or hung upside down outside a gas station like Mussolini.
I mean, he's committed war crimes against humanity for what he's done at the border, child separation policy. It's really interesting. I saw when we were listening to Democracy Now! The other day, it was Amy ended with one of these crazy stats. It was like, she was like, currently there's 666 kids that the U.S. government can't find their parents at the border. Right. I was like, wait, 666 kids? And that's a result of the Trump policy? Is that a coincidence? Or is this guy just a piece of shit?
Yeah.
Like literally 666 kids, that's how many are abandoned right now. That it's baffling.
Yeah.
The willingness to treat others that don't look like them as inhuman.
Yeah. Well, it's also, it's baffling how much power can corrupt people. Like once people have a taste of power, and to be able to just say, I'm going to separate you because you're in our control now. It's really, I think, this whole administration could be like a psychological study for how power, like a really bad person and a lot of power can come together to create really awful, inhuman policy.
I mean, yeah, I think we have enough examples of that throughout history. We need some.
We just never thought it would cut. We just never thought those really bad people would become the head of our government.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen to anyone. It's happened to the best of countries.
Yeah.
But luckily we're hopefully out of it for good.
Speaking of really bad people, I feel like we should talk about the fact that Trump is trying to get rid of all of his black friends. Ben Carson just got COVID.
and they're not going to help them. Like that's what I still don't understand. Black people who voted for Trump, it's like, yo, what are you thinking? Like, did you not just see the Herman Cain just died? They did not care about Herman Cain whatsoever. Was not
You forgot about him.
mentioned. Was not even mentioned in Republican circles. Was not even thought about.
Ben Carson better
No one cares.
Ben Carson better hope he gets really good medical care.
It's insane.
Well, I mean, so now I think there's no one in the Trump administration who hasn't gotten COVID. Just today, Corey Lewandowski tested positive. Mark Meadows, his chief of staff, Hope Hicks, Kayleigh McEnany, his press secretary, Stephen Miller. Everybody in that administration has gotten COVID now.
I mean, and honestly, for their handling of it, truthfully, not out of spite, they really all deserve it.
Yeah.
It's been for as much information and preparation and resources as are available to that office.
Yeah.
It's honestly laughable how terribly the situation has been bundled.
Yeah.
Like, how do you mess up that badly when given a head start and told, exactly what's going to happen and given the tools to handle it? How do you mess it up? How are we the worst numbers in the world? Like, what?
Well, it's like, you create this reality like Amer was talking about. You create this fabricated reality, and anything that, pushes up against that reality is, you just label that false. And I think that something that I'm really looking forward to with the Biden administration is a return to just like a commonly held reality, like a reality that most people in this country, most meaning more than, 5 million more votes than Trump got, that most people in the country will, all believe in the same, except like the same set of facts and rules and science. It's such a relief to see, Biden go on stage and talk about things. And you're not just like, what reality is that guy living in? You're like, oh, I can recognize Joe Biden's reality. Like, his views are different than mine. Like, he's, maybe more cozy with corporate interests than I would want our president to be. But his version of reality is not so far removed that I'm like, how can this guy have the nuclear launch codes?
Right. It doesn't make you question all that's good in the world every day.
Right.
You can actually breathe. You're not worried because with Trump, every day was a headline.
I know.
Honestly, I forget who put it this way. Maybe it was Seth Meyers who put it this way. It's just exhausting. Honestly, it's just like the electorate is never in history, like at least in my lifetime, I can't recall a time when politics was so top of the page all the time.
Yeah.
Because this clown just put himself in the headlines all the time.
Right.
On just some backwardness.
Do you think that you're going to go, like, once Biden becomes president, do you think that you're looking forward to the days where you won't need to check the news every day to be like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? Or has Trump made you even, because I feel like Trump has made us just a lot more aware of the importance of our politics. So I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, politics, I'm excited for politics to become boring again and not like a reality show. But at the same time, I think we can't lose sight of the fact that we just stopped paying attention really during the Obama years. And that's kind of what allowed for Trump to
very true. Very true. I mean, like you said, it's a yes and no question, because on the one hand, yeah, it is a silver lining of the Trump administration that now people are paying a lot more attention. And honestly, the American electorate should be a lot more involved.
Yeah.
Period. And honestly, I think this is a good opportunity potentially to introduce a multi-party system within, the US. It works in literally every other civilized democracy. So we can figure it out.
Well, we shouldn't break off into different parties until the Republicans do.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. But I mean, honestly, if anyone's going to lead the charge, it's got to be us as the progressive wing. Yeah. There has to be, a progressive party, center left party, center right, and then the Nazis.
Right. Well,
So
Democratic
so we can at
Socialists,
least point them out.
DSA had a big win this past election cycle. Nithya Raman is now an LA City Council member. The LA City Council has a tremendous amount of power in directing policy in LA. And now there's a DSA member who's on the city council, which is a really, really big deal.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's honestly I think the next 4 years are going to be all about, really engage, staying engaged with the American electorate, and, hopefully, aren't the races again in like 2 years for local elections?
Well, yeah, also
Um,
there's some senators I think who are up for re-election.
yeah, in 2 years. So
Let's put in what do you call them? Age let's put like an upper age limit for senators and Congress people in general. Like maybe Biden, like this
I
guy's
mean,
78 years old.
it's
So
it's
old.
interesting. I mean, we were Bernie fans. I mean, Bernie was the oldest.
He's like
So
80. And do you know that Nancy Pelosi is 80 also? She's 80 years old.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
But
These
I mean,
Democrats are so old.
it's interesting you say that, because I mean, I think, yes, within, the Democratic wing, we do need some fresh faces. Period. I mean, it's good to see like some diversity, like those two gay black senators, I guess, from New York.
From New York, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see some diversity and some more representation. Obviously, America isn't a bunch of old white guys, so the fact that that shift is happening within our governing body is just, it's a better hold on freedom for a lot of us, because it almost guarantees that our interests will be represented.
Yeah.
Because, people who are from where we're from are actually in the decision making process. We're actually at the table to be heard. So I have a lot of hopes for this administration. Joe really kind of won by getting behind progressives. I think he appointed Bernie Sanders as his Secretary of Labor.
I think that was the desire. I don't know if he actually did that.
I think that's he's announced his appointments.
Wait, for
I
real?
think that was on. Yeah, I think that came on Democracy Now! This afternoon.
No, that was what the progressive wing wants. That they want him to be appointed Secretary of Labor.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think we hear about that like right now. If Bernie Sanders is appointed Secretary of Labor,
that'd be dope. I mean, he's gonna get some kind of appointment because he's Bernie Sanders.
So CNN reports Sanders would accept if he was appointed Labor Secretary.
Okay, so they're flirting with the idea. They're talking about it. They'll make it a thing soon.
That would be awesome. But let's not get our hopes up.
I mean, Biden is going to need some progressives within his administration. Period.
Absolutely. I'm really excited / really interested to see. I know he's made racial equity like one of his platform, like a singular part of his approach, particularly now because he's essentially voted into office on a wave of black turnout in Michigan and Wisconsin and Georgia and Pennsylvania. Like, I'm really curious and really anticipating, what kind of policies he's going to be putting forth and who he's going to be appointing and who he's going to be listening to. I think that's, just a huge deal in the United States to have a president who's making that such a priority. I'm really excited about that.
I mean, we are obviously overdue for a racial reckoning in this country. It's been a long time coming. Can you believe it's 2020 and we're still talking about racial equity and people getting paid?
And Black Lives Matter.
And Black Lives Matter. Just a simple statement. Black Lives Matter.
Right.
We breathe. We're human.
Yes.
Like, come on.
This is where we are. Yeah.
This is where some of this country is. It's insane. It's like, did we grow up in the same place? Did we go to the same schools? There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
Universal education policy has to be put in place so that pockets of ignorance can no longer exist within the center of this country. If you look along the electoral college lines, you see which states voted for Trump. It's largely in the middle. and south of the country,
Yeah.
where, test scores are traditionally the poorest. We got to really do something about that. Honestly, it's like, regardless of your party politics, just as a general human kindness, I feel more comfortable if I know my neighbor knows what 2 + 2 is. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, just in general, we need to make sure that people are semi-educated so that, no matter their role within society, they have the mental wherewithal to do it right. It really calls into question, people's mental capacity if it was so close.
Yeah.
What's going on? How is the gap so crazy? So
this was definitely a very close election, unfortunately, but I think it's important that, we're coming at it from a position of Joe Biden won comfortably. No matter what Trump says, he can't take that away from, the country or from the majority of the people who voted. And it's a much better position to be in than the other way around,
Very
and
true.
It was a very peaceful, so far it's been a very peaceful election. People were prophesying, guns in the streets, tanks on the streets. Certainly that was, something that the right wing wanted. They wanted there to be a mass uprising. They wanted there to be, a police crackdown and all the things that they wished that, had been happening during the Black Lives Matter protests over the summer. I think that's something they were very much looking forward to with this election, and they didn't get it. They didn't have that satisfaction.
Which is good for all of America. I mean, we're I've seen charts that said we are more polarized now within our political ideology than we were on the brink of the Civil War.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's good that we're now with Joe and we can kind of take a chill pill and get back to business.
Well, I heard,
that's really what it's about. It's about getting back to business. Let's get back to normal. Let's get back, on not even let alone progressive agenda. Let's get back on a solid economic agenda that isn't just based on the stock market. How about basing it on jobs and, the health and security of the average American?
Yeah.
Or, just participating with the rest of the world, not being a laughing stock like we've been for the last 4 years. Let's get back to some place of, American greatness. Like I know it's funny that they have the term "Make America Great Again," but now it is great again. We can finally be great again. The fucking Nazi is out. We can finally be who we are. Like we have a chance to be great again. Like
we gotta
focus on Georgia.
Let's talk about Georgia before we have to wrap up, because I've been doing some deep dives into who these 2 Republican senators are, and Jason, let me tell you, they are garbage. They are awful people. Let's talk about Kelly Loeffler. What do you know about Kelly Loeffler?
I know that she is she was appointed to her position.
She was appointed. She was not a politician.
Not a politician. She was appointed to her position. That's traditionally an elected position, but because, I guess no one was there to fill the seat, now she's in power. And she had kind of, didn't she have inside information on COVID before it was going to happen? She really, I guess, got rid of her stocks within a certain company or something and was able to profit off of the economy's shifts before COVID happened. So I mean, I know it's basically like insider trading as a politician, which is just a red-handed, like blatant spit in your face, like just abdication of our democracy. It's really it's blatant, and it shouldn't be able to happen in a.
And if you have that R next to your name, you can get away with any crime in this country. If you're a Republican.
Yeah, because they look the other way when they do it. It's really
she was never investigated by the Senate, by Mitch McConnell, for insider trading, using this information she got about COVID in January or February, and then making millions of dollars in profit by selling her stocks. David Perdue he's the other Republican senator. He is running against John Ossoff. Kelly Loeffler is running against Reverend Warnock. And Perdue is just a trash bag. He's just a human trash bag. He's so bad. He was CEO of Reebok and Dollar General. He made millions in corporate bonuses, the kinds that all CEOs are now getting these days, where they're just so overpaid. He also took control of this textile company in North Carolina, ran it into the ground. He's responsible for the single largest layoff in North Carolina state history, because once that textile company went under, 7,000 people lost their jobs, and he still walked away with millions of dollars. Perdue also was present at that conversation where Trump called African nations shithole countries, and Perdue to this day denies that Trump ever said that. Last thing is Perdue put out a campaign ad with John Ossoff, who's a Jewish candidate, and he put out a cartoon of John Ossoff with a giant nose to try to, show like a Jew can't be senator of Georgia or whatever he wanted to say. So yeah, they're both awful, awful people. And I'm just excited. We got a Jewish guy, John Ossoff. We have a black reverend. And I think this is the team to help us win the Senate.
I think so too. And hopefully with, Stacey Abrams' work,
oh my God,
we can just push it through. Honestly, it's so funny. I think she did an interview with maybe it was Trevor Noah. And she was just kind of laughing at the fact that she was just like, if they had given me her rightful job, then she would have never had time to do all these,
right.
all this campaign.
Right. If Brian Kemp had just not done so much voter suppression, she would be governor, and she wouldn't have time to help flip Georgia.
I mean, they really cheated her out of that race.
Oh, completely.
Which is insane.
But I think that's another reason why we should be. I mean, I think Trump would have won if we didn't have a pandemic, because a state like Georgia never had mail-in balloting. I don't know if they had mail-in ballots until the pandemic. That's why they could get away with stealing this, the Stacey Abrams election by having so few voting machines and closing down offices, et cetera, keeping people from voting. But now with this pandemic, it really has increased the franchise and helped so many more people vote.
Luckily, this pandemic spelled the end of Trump. I mean, it was the one good thing to really come from COVID.
I mean, what's crazy is that the stock market is still, there's so much money being pumped into the stock market or into the economy that's not flowing to workers, obviously, but it's making the stock market look like it's, having gains or whatever. So a lot of people would look at that stock market and be like, oh, the economy is doing fine. And would still vote for Trump.
I mean, if you follow the stocks, which I kind of vaguely do sometimes, it's been an interesting 4 years. It hasn't been a steady increase. It's been like very, very jagged. So every time this guy jumps on the news, things can go skyrocket or things could go plummet, depending on what he says in certain industries. It really was insane. And I'm glad he's gone, because it'll stabilize the market.
Yeah. Well, Susan just posted a couple things in the chat. She posted a hat that Joe Biden now has. It's a clapback to MAGA, where they say "we just did," like "Make America Great Again," and Joe Biden says "we just did." And she also posted a link to phone bank support for the Georgia runoff. There's a phone bank group I'm a part of called Misfits for Biden that's pivoting to the Georgia runoff. But there's a lot of different phone banking. I know that this weekend, Abrams, her organization, I think Fair Fight, is hosting phone banking. I just feel like we're in such good hands with Stacey Abrams leading the charge on this. And I hope that she gets an incredible cabinet position when this is all over.
100%.
What do you think she should get? What kind of cabinet position? I'm thinking Supreme Court justice seat, but that's maybe just me.
That would be dope.
Yeah, Justice
she
Abrams
still has a lot of good years in her. So yeah, that's an interesting appointment. Huh. Wow. That'd be an awesome appointment for her. She'd be good in that position.
I just love the idea of her going toe to toe with Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett.
It's just kind of crazy, that this president was allowed to not. I mean, that the Republicans in general were not only allowed to block Obama's appointment, but then appoint 3 of their own within a
and
4.5
after losing
year
the
span.
popular vote. Yeah.
After losing the popular vote.
A majority of the justices on the Supreme Court were appointed by Republican presidents who lost the popular vote.
Which just kind of cements minority rule in this country. And it's something that needs to be addressed by this administration. Hopefully he does pack the courts if we're not getting things done. I mean, I'm a person that likes to give everyone a chance. I don't see that going far. And
we can't give Mitch McConnell a chance. I know Joe Biden is putting a good spin on this. Like, if we don't win Georgia, we can negotiate with Mitch McConnell. And I say do not negotiate.
There's no negotiating with Mitch McConnell.
We do not negotiate with terrorists.
We do not negotiate with terrorists.
We do not negotiate with terrorists.
That's a good reply. We cannot.
Mitch McConnell, his singular goal is to make government not work. Like, he doesn't care about abortion. He doesn't care about taxes. Like, he wants to give tax breaks to the rich. Like, he'll vote for that. But his singular project is to make government not work and to keep the status quo. And you just can't negotiate with a guy like that.
No. He needs to be cooked like the turtle he is. But
turtle soup.
At the same time, I mean, honestly, and that's one thing that really upsets me to this day about the Democratic Party. The fact that they could look at this opportunity of the pandemic, look at the cultural shift within America, especially the fact that, Louisville is in Kentucky, at, Mitch's state. I think that they really missed out on an opportunity to field a better candidate. I think the candidate that they put up, she was like some army veteran chick. She wasn't really a strong candidate. She wasn't really she had that like Hillary type thing going for her, where people were like, okay, you may be qualified, but just not that personable. And, I feel like that was a real mistake on the Democratic Party's part to support that candidate. I remember earlier on, there was some black dude from Kentucky that was running.
Yeah.
And he got very close to getting that Democratic nomination within the Democratic primaries, but it came down to like a couple percentage votes or something. The black dude didn't get it because of a small margin, whatever.
Right.
I think that would have been a far stronger candidate against Mitch McConnell, given the atmosphere and given that it was what was happening in Kentucky at the time. I feel like the Democratic Party really slept on that.
Like, I think that, you might be right, but at the same time, look at someone like Jamie Harrison, who ran a very well-funded Senate race against Lindsey Graham, and he still couldn't win. And I think a lot of it comes down to just like our broken politics and a lot of disenfranchised voters and Republican suppression. And the fact that there are still just a lot of white people who, as you say, like, are very happy with the status quo and don't want to see that change. And Lindsey Graham was saying the same thing. He was basically saying, like, protect our way of life, vote for me. Susan Collins won her race. All of these Republican senators did very well. And, they beat the projections of all the pollsters.
And I mean, it's interesting because it is, like you say, there's a lot of dog whistling going on, and it's getting so blatant to the fact that it really is being painted as an us versus them scenario.
Yeah.
There's a class of white America that's really trying to essentially preserve their survival and their status within, the American caste system, as it were.
Right.
And that should be the goal of the progressive left wing, to make sure that those people know that this is no longer their country to do with whatever they want. They're welcome to stay if they want to support the economy or whatever. But otherwise, they can take their money and, go to some island or some shit,
Or
because
they can go to Argentina like all of their friends.
yeah, I mean, don't spoil Argentina. It's nice down there now. Like, there's no country for
I was
Nazis.
making a
Period.
Nazi joke.
No, I know, but there's no country for Nazis anymore. We got to get rid of all those people everywhere, because hatred has to go. It's not conducive to the survival of humanity.
On that note, I have to run. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for Bushwick Politic, and we'll see you all next week.
See you guys next week. Take care.
Have a great week, Jason.
You too, Adi.
Bye.